of yesterday, there's already 17 bills filed that have University Interscholastic League in their text. Some have very direct impact on UIL, and some very direct impact even at our core of who we are, would fundamentally change who we are. And some, they're sort of glancing blows, kind of involve UIL, kind of don't. But there's 17 with UIL in their text already, and the session hasn't even begun.
Hello everyone, this is Glenn West, Assistant Executive Director of THSCA. I want to invite you to make plans for our regional meeting and POI meetings. Our regional meeting is on February the 1st, the first Saturday in February. A very important meeting, and be looking for that. It'll be all over the state. As far as the POI meetings, that meeting should start happening sometime in the month of January. The first meetings will be taking place actually the second or third week in January. A POI meeting is not a regional meeting. The POI meeting is actually a meeting with your power of influence coaches on your staff to hear real issues that are happening within your region, and also information that can go a little deeper than what happens at the regional meeting, as we are preparing for that great meeting on February the 1st. I want to also make sure you know that the Leadership Summit is on February 24th in Arlington. It's at Esports Stadium. We look forward to seeing everybody there. And other than that, love to see you. Thank you so much for your support of THSCA, and we look forward to spending the spring together. Thank you.
Hey coaches, did you know we're now offering shows for all sports? That's right, whether it's basketball, volleyball, softball, baseball, football, soccer, you name it, we've got you covered. If you're looking for a way to showcase your program, promote your players, and highlight the amazing things happening with your team, our coaches shows are the perfect solution. Plus, our business model lets you or your booster club raise money while building excitement and support for your program. Don't miss the opportunity to take your team's story to the next level. Find out how you can get your very own coaches show. Reach out to Chris at 713-269-4620 today. That's 713-269-4620, because every team deserves the spotlight. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Coach's Call. I'm Chris Doelle, and as usual, we have some very cool guests here today, and I have the privilege of handing the mic over to Joe Martin, Executive Director of Texas High School Coaches Association. Joe, how are you doing? If you could, tell us what we're going to talk about today and then introduce your guest.
Chris, I'm doing great. Happy New Year to you, and looking forward to our guests joining us today. We're going to talk about UIL. We're going to talk about some general overview and scope of activities at UIL, and we've got Dr. Jamey Harrison joining us this morning. And so really excited about this session and this broadcast, and thanks for putting us together. So, Jamey, as we visit with our listeners today, just as an introduction for them, the UIL plays a large part in athletics in Texas, as we all know. Yet there's a lot of misunderstanding amongst parents, players, coaches, and even athletic directors about exactly what and who the UIL is. People must be informed about the UIL, especially ahead of this upcoming legislative session. So that's the reason for this podcast episode, is really to offer a general overview of the UIL. In another episode regarding UIL, we'll examine the specific role of some of those rules governing athletics, and we won't get into that today. We'll stay with a general overview. So, Dr. Harrison, welcome to the Coach's Call, and if you don't mind, give us a brief overview of your personal history, and then we'll jump into the history of the UIL.
I greatly appreciate you having me, Joe. My name's Jamey Harrison. I'm the Deputy Executive Director with UIL. I am 14 years at the UIL now. Prior to that, UIL has always played a huge role in my life. I was an athlete in high school, and being a part of UIL athletics really helped shape my future. I became a coach. Spent some time as a coach and then as a high school principal and as a school superintendent, all of which are jobs that I ended up staying very closely tied to athletics and what UIL means, and had the opportunity to join UIL 14 years ago. Just on the personal level, I also live this as a father. I'm the father of two sons, both of whom have been very active in UIL activities, football, track, baseball, basketball, the whole gamut. And so I still have a son in high school who's actively participating in UIL athletics. So it's meant a lot to me individually when I was a kid. It's meant a lot to me professionally. I've been the main focus of my career professionally. And it's a big part of my life personally as a father. So really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of all of this.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. I think it's important for our listeners to know that you've lived this life as a coach, as an administrator, as a superintendent, but you've also living it as a parent. And you're very actively involved, and your kids have been very actively involved in UIL competition throughout their careers. And so I think that's really important for us to have your vision from a parent side, from an administrator side. And your 14 years have been a lot of growth through UIL, and really on behalf of THSCA, we want to thank you for all the things that you bring to UIL and all the things you've accomplished. So let's jump right into this. Let's talk about the history and purpose of UIL. And can you give us just a brief history of UIL and how it became the governing body of extracurricular activities in Texas schools?
Yeah, so UIL has an extensive history. I mean, after the UIL, we're now in our 115th year. Right, so well over a century, UIL has been involved in these activities, and actually started before 1910, when a debate league was created, and that's all that was governed at the time was the competition of debate. A couple of years later, following that same model, there was an athletics league joined largely to put together a state track meet, and then in 1910 they brought it all together and decided that this was going to be the body that governed all of these activities. I mean, I think it's important for people to remember, we started off as a debate league, and we still sanction more activities that aren't sports than we do that are sports. So it's a very wide gamut. We're up to about 80 state championship activities across, music and fine arts and academics and athletics. And that 115 years has seen a lot of growth and a lot of evolution. It was started off a little more centralized in terms of power, but didn't take long to become very decentralized. I mean, one of the characteristics of Texas that has been true for a long, long time is it's a very local control, grassroots oriented state. We always have been as Texans, and that's the way UIL is run. I mean, we do have the central office, but these rules are made by our schools. We literally touch every square inch of the 265,000 square miles that is the great state of Texas. And there is representation from all over, north, south, east, west, central, from the very smallest schools we have to the very largest schools we have, and everywhere in between. They're involved, and we'll talk a little bit more about the rulemaking process coming up, but they're all involved in making our rules and in adjudicating our rules. So it's a very decentralized, grassroots-oriented organization, and really has been for the last century.
Covers the entire state. You guys as University Interscholastic League touch every school district in the state of Texas and every community in the state of Texas. And so it's a daunting task, and the things that y'all are responsible for. Just the primary mission of the overall mission of UIL, and why is that essential to our Texas schools, that mission of the UIL?
So it's a combination of a small number of things. I mean, what we want to do is, as best we can, we want to offer a competition or a chance to participate, a chance to get involved to every kid in high school in Texas and every kid in junior high in Texas, if we can. Now, obviously, not every kid is going to participate, but we want to offer a wide enough gamut of competitions that that kids at least have the opportunity to find a place to be connected to that school. And then our mission is to make sure that those competitions are fair, right? We're really serious about trophies in Texas. And so we want a level playing field for those kids to compete and for those kids to be able to give their all and have an opportunity to shine. And the reason that is so important to our schools is the most community involvement, the connection that Texas communities have to their schools is very special. It's very intimate. It's different than it is in some other states, quite frankly, where we're very community driven. And as the old college athletics saying goes, athletics is sort of the front porch of the school, right? Those are our Friday night football games or Tuesday night basketball games or volleyball games. Those are the largest community events that happen in that community. It's where more community members come together in support of their school than ever. And they're there because they're supporting kids from their community, right? Kids that they see at church, kids that they see at the grocery store. They know their parents, they know their grandparents. It's very community driven. So it brings the community connection to schools in ways that are better than and more impactful than any other connection that the school can generate with its community. And there is just loads of research over the last century about how participation in extracurricular activities improves the overall educational experience for kids who are involved. If you get kids involved in one extracurricular activity, you essentially cut in half the chances that kid ever drops out of school. If you get that kid involved in two, you virtually eliminate the chances that kid's ever drops out of school. Attendance rate goes up, behavior improves, academic performance improves, both on standardized tests and on 6 and 9 week grading grade reports. Everything is better at the school when their extracurricular activities are working well, are successful, and have a lot of kids participating in them, from band to the football team to the cheer squad to the debate team. When those things are going well, kids are doing better, schools are doing better, communities feel better and more connected to their schools. It is the best connection between a school district and its community that we can possibly offer.
Certainly, UIL is interwoven into the fabric of the state of Texas, and as we talk about the strength of UIL, the strength of extracurricular activities, and the importance of that as we look at communities and schools, and you go in and you evaluate those schools and communities that have had a lot of success in extracurricular activities. There's a lot of positives that are there, and so important for all of us. So the scope of activities that UIL covers is not just athletics, it's extracurricular. There are some non-athletic programs that UIL manages as well. Would you like to just touch base briefly on some of the non-athletic programs?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, we sanction more competitions that aren't sports than are. And we feel like we have a wide variety of competitions that really give kids an opportunity, no matter who that kid is or what that kid's interests are, whether it's in the fine arts with one-act play or music or choir, whether it's more ingrained in the STEM activities, science, technology, engineering, and math. We have all, robotics competitions, actual mathematics competitions, accounting competitions. If you have an interest in something, we probably have an activity that touches it. And we've added to that to broaden the net that we're casting, trying to get kids involved. In recent years, we added a state mariachi competition. Mariachi is really important in parts of our state. In other parts, you don't hear it much. But in the parts where it's important, that brings kids in who otherwise have not previously been engaged. And so by bringing in our robotics competitions, our mariachi competitions, really broadening that net, we feel like we've got an opportunity for kids to participate if they want one.
Yeah. We talk all the time at the Coaches Association, in state and out of state, nationally, about we feel like we have the greatest athletic or activity association in the country with UIL, and you guys have done a great job and continue to do that. So let's switch gears just a little bit. Let's talk oversight and governance. Who oversees UIL, Jamey, and how is the organization held accountable?
Well, as the deputy executive director, I will tell you, it feels like everybody oversees it. And to a degree, that's true. But let's talk through the technicalities of that. So established in statute, so actually in state law, UIL is a part of the University of Texas at Austin. UT Austin created the UIL. It started with the debate league, then with the athletics league that started the state track meet, and ultimately the UIL starting in 1910 has always been housed and parented by, so to speak, the University of Texas. Now, the University of Texas's involvement, however, in our rules or in our alignment process and districting is virtually non-existent. They provide administrative support, so they provide human resources support and purchasing support and all of the guidelines that go along with purchasing or any kind of state requirement for a state agency as far as that goes. They provide that kind of administrative support. All of our rules, however, are made by our school superintendents. So we're set up very similar to the state government. We have an executive branch, we have a judicial branch, and we have a legislative branch. So our legislative branch is the UIL Legislative Council. That is actually currently 35 members. 32 of them are voting members. And we have 3 advisory members. And I'll walk you through how that comes to pass. We have 6 conferences, 1A through 6A. Each of those conferences is divided geographically into 4 regions. So every conference elects one superintendent from each region. So Conference 1A will select a Region 1 representative, a Region 2, a Region 3, and a Region 4 representative. So 6 conferences times 4 regions gives you 24 elected members. We then have 8 appointed members, and that's to help make sure we have north, south, east, west, central all covered, that we make sure we have, big to small covered, every type of, we want the Legislative Council to look as much like our membership as possible. So those 8 appointed members help complete that picture. We actually now have 3 advisory committee members. They are not voting members, and they represent charter schools. We have a growing number of charter schools who are members. Many of those are great members. We do have some who have issues at times, and they tend to sort of paint the rest of the really good members with their problems. And so adding these advisory committee members has been really helpful, so that if we're talking about anything that's going to impact a charter school differently, they have the opportunity to provide some feedback before the 32 voting members actually vote. But they also get to explain how, look, we can point to 100 charter schools who are doing this great. We have one who's having a problem, but we've got 100 who are doing it great. So that gets us to 35 total members. All of our rules are made through that body. They meet twice a year in June and October. There are no secret rulemaking meetings. There are no secret ballots. Everything that happens, every action that's taken at UIL is done in a posted public open meeting. They take rule proposals from the general public and from school employees and schools. I always point out, we once considered a proposal submitted by somebody from Japan. They emailed it in. They were a former Texan living in Japan, and they felt like they had a rule change that would be helpful. Every single proposal that comes in is referred to that rulemaking body, and they consider it. So that's how our rules are made. Now, our rules are adjudicated through the sort of the judicial branch, if you will. And that starts with, using that same metaphor, sort of the district courts. So the local courts or district courts would be the district executive committee. That is one voting member from every high school in that UIL district. They hear allegations of rules violations involving schools in their district. They set their district schedules, all of the parameters related to their district competition. They control original jurisdiction over that, including rules infractions. Then we have sort of the Supreme Court. That would be the UIL State Executive Committee. That's 12 members appointed by the Commissioner of Education. Again, very representative across the state, people with great experience who hear appeals to any district executive committee decision. So any district executive committee decision is appealable to the state executive committee. And then at times we will have cases that involve schools from 2 different UIL districts. So that would be 2 different DECs. So the SEC will have to take original jurisdiction because there's a conflict on which of those local courts would actually have authority. So again, yes, the UIL has staff members, and we do come to the office at a building in Austin. But the staff members really help keep things moving through the process. The actual decisions and the actual processes, as I mentioned previously, are very grassroots oriented. Schools elect their representatives to serve on the Legislative Council. They give feedback to those representatives. Those representatives make our rules. The schools themselves adjudicate those rules through those local district executive committee hearings that I previously discussed. And then there's a state executive committee to hear appeals to that. UIL staff members don't cast a single vote to make a rule, pass a rule, write a rule, adjudicate a rule on any sort of sanction. We're there to help provide, as a resource, provide information about the rules, explain processes to those involved in those various points in the process. But they make the rules, very grassroots oriented.
Very detailed explanation of who UIL is and how it operates. From a coach's perspective, Dr. Harrison, I know before I got into this role and attended legislative council meetings and saw the process, and I continue to see the process of the rulemaking piece. It seemed like it took a long time for UIL to make a rule, create a proposal, allow a proposal to become a rule through the legislative council process. Now that I sit in the chair that I sit in, I think it's the very best way to do that. Can you just talk to that just a little bit about why that takes a little bit longer when an association like THSCA brings you a proposal, brings the UIL a proposal? It takes a few sessions typically to be able to move that proposal into a rule change, and why that's so important.
Yes, I'm going to start in reverse about why it's so important. And we've already talked about it. We touch every square inch of this state. We have our smallest high school that typically has 9 students in it in grades 9 through 12. We have our largest high school that has more than 7,000 students in it in grades 9 through 12. And we have everything in between. So when we're going to pass a rule that impacts that diverse of a constituency and that large of a constituency, we need to make sure it is not going to have unintended consequences. We need to make sure that the final version that's passed is refined enough to be effective and work for all of those schools. So in a perfect process, I mentioned the Legislative Council meets twice a year. And there's always exceptions to what I'm about to describe. This would be a perfect process. A rule change proposal would come to the council in June. It would be heard by the appropriate committee. They would be able to offer some input, ask some questions, talk about how effective we think that rule might be. If it's a really good idea, they're probably going to want us to find out how all schools feel about that. That would be through a survey. So we would survey between June and October. We would survey all school superintendents across the state on that particular topic. That might be one question. That might be multiple questions, depending on what issue it is we're discussing. We have to give those schools time to really dig into the issue, to talk to their people, their coaches, their band directors, whoever it is, so that they are making a well-informed response as they respond to our survey requests. We then take that and have to disaggregate that data. We want to know how 1A superintendents think about it compared to 4A superintendents compared to 6A superintendents. We want to know how urban superintendents think about it compared to suburban superintendents compared to rural superintendents. We want to know how West Texas feels compared to East Texas. And all those different ways you can slice that data up. We want to slice it up. We want to bring that information back then in October. If this thing hits perfectly, it's a really good idea when it's pitched in June. We send a survey out and get feedback from superintendents, and schools generally respond very favorable to the idea. And we can have good final clean language working with constituency groups like THSCA. Then that could be passed in October to be effective for the following school year. So in a perfect world, everything falls just right. It's going to take a full year to get a rule just right and actually implemented. So from the time we pass it in October to the time it becomes effective the following summer or August, the following school year, we've got to spend time informing schools. This is the new rule change. This is how it works. This is what you need to think through so that people are prepared to be successful with that new rule instead of it sneaking up on them. So in a perfect world, it's going to take a year. And I think I just explained why. And the reason it sometimes takes longer than a year is because you get feedback through that survey process, or when you have discussions at that second meeting, people say, well, that really like the idea, but have you thought about this aspect of it? Well, now we got to go back to constituent groups. We got to go back potentially to other surveys, get more feedback before we really get that thing ready to roll out.
We have an immense respect for that process, and that's a new respect from sitting in this chair versus sitting in the coach's office. And I think it's really important that our coaches hear that process and understand that. It has made a huge difference, and we try to emulate this process to the best of our ability here at THSCA. So thank you for explaining that. A question that we always hear UIL connected with UT, and you explained that, but the connection with UIL and TEA, or Texas Education Agency, and lawmakers, can you just briefly touch on that relationship?
Yeah, so I'll start with TEA. In statute, the commissioner has the opportunity to approve or veto our rules. So we go through the process I just described, and the council passes a new rule. It's still not a rule until it gets approval by the commissioner. The commissioner does not have revision authority, so they can't take something the council passed and change it and say, this is what you're going to do. He can, or she can, either approve it or veto it. We haven't had many examples of it being vetoed, but there's more than 0 of those. And then we obviously have to work very closely with TEA. So they're charged with enforcing state laws as they relate to schools, and many of those state laws relate to extracurricular activities. So some of that enforcement they've delegated to us. Some of that enforcement they keep on their own, and we work very closely together on. So we don't report to TEA necessarily, but we certainly are aware of them, have to work very closely with them, and understand that they have very broad authority when it comes to school districts. With the state legislature, obviously, they're the ones that make state laws. UIL, as a state agency under state law, does not have the opportunity to lobby. We are not able to be for or against bills. We are not able to lobby. What we are able to do is serve as a resource. We can talk to legislators about how, if a bill goes into effect as written, here would be the impact. Here are some thoughts that, what we've seen through our history, what we've learned. You might consider some tweaks to the bill. But we don't get to be for or against. We don't get to lobby. We simply get to serve as a resource. So we work hard to develop relationships with those legislators. Of course, as you know, every election, there's some turnover. And so there's relationships to be made. But we work closely with them. There's actually, for a session that hasn't really started yet, we're already up to, as of yesterday, this could be higher today, I haven't checked today. As of yesterday, there's already 17 bills filed that have University Interscholastic League in their text. Some have very direct impact on UIL, and some very direct impact even at our core of who we are, would fundamentally change who we are. And some, they're sort of glancing blows, kind of involve UIL, kind of don't. But there's 17 with UIL in their text already, and the session hasn't even begun.
Yeah, and speaking of the session, there'll be a growing concern about what those 17 bills plus look like, and our involvement with that. That'll be on a different topic at a different day, and hopefully a different podcast. Let's switch gears right quick, and before we run out of time, and talk about athletic specific questions, just regulations and guidelines, just key documents. What are key documents and rules the Texas high school coaches have to follow or must follow under the UIL guidelines?
So every coach should be aware of the UIL Constitution and contest rules. So that's our sort of grandfather document that rules everything. But they also need to be aware of all of their sport-specific manuals. There are manuals that involve in-season stuff, out-of-season stuff, summer stuff, health and safety stuff. They're all on our website. Coaches don't necessarily need to be able to quote those from memory, but they certainly need to know where they are. They're great resources when coaches are putting plans together or working through whatever issue that arises in their program. Those documents can really help. Of course, they can always reach out and call us, but usually the answers are right there in writing. If you know where the Constitution and contest rules are and where those sport-specific manuals are, and the TEA side-by-side manual when it comes to academic eligibility and those kinds of questions.
And the reason for asking that is so our young coaches hear that again about CCR and all the guidelines that are out there that UIL provides. It's so important that all of our coaches understand that and fall in line with that. A fair play and a safety question. Just what systems are in place to ensure fair play in athletic competitions by the UIL?
Our rule-making process and our rule enforcement process. And, those are living, breathing things. We're never finished with those, and they're never perfect. We're working right now to improve those, right? There's always issues, whether they're societal or otherwise, that come into play that weren't in play when those rules were originally passed. And so there's a natural evolutionary process to those rules having to constantly be reviewed to address issues as they arise, working with groups like the Texas High School Coaches Association is critical in that whole process, because that is where coaches can really have their voice heard the most. We love talking to individual coaches. We take feedback from individual coaches all the time. But when you can aggregate those coaches' voices like THSCA does and speak with one voice for so many, it really helps impact decisions we make.
Have really enjoyed being a part of that process, and we rely on our advisory committees, our board of directors, our coaches that are members to speak to us with those concerns, so we can take it back to Dr. Harrison and the UIL, and that process has been really, really good. Switching gears to enforcement and consequences. How does the UIL enforce its rules, and what are the consequences for violations?
Consequences can vary, and they're all spelled out in the Constitution, going back to those governing documents. The type of behavior that's being addressed will have a range of penalties that are available. And that all starts at the district executive committee level. I can't speak enough to how critical that district executive committee process is. People get mad, they hear something happened, or a kid changed schools for whatever reason, and they just can't believe we let them get away with it. And they don't understand that it's not anybody that works in this building that let them get away with it. That all starts with the schools closest to the situation. The schools closest to the situation, most impacted by the situation, and have the most information about that situation. They're the ones who hear it first. And that's the process that we're working to improve. We're not working to change it necessarily and take authority away from that local committee. We think that's still the right committee, but we're trying to make the process a little smoother, a little easier for people to raise their hand when they think something is running afoul of the rules. It really starts there. On top of that, of course, we have the state executive committee that can come in. We've got a new rule passed where if they think the district executive committee has not appropriately applied rules, the state executive committee can take that case and review it and consider additional sanctions or different sanctions depending on the scenario.
Fair play is very important. Enforcement of that is very important. And all the processes that are out there, y'all have done a really good job of taking care of that. Just in closing, just looking ahead with some goals as we close out this session. What are some of the UIL key goals or initiatives for the future? What can you share with us that y'all are working on?
Well, we're working on a lot, and it would take a long time for me to give you that list, but I'll tell you what's at the top of the list. It's what we just talked about. It's making sure that rules enforcement, rules review process is as good as possible. What I would say, just very plainly and transparently to folks, is if we're not going to have fair play, what's the point of having play? Right? That's the whole point of having a league like this, is that we have fair and balanced competition as best as possible. It's just really hard at times, guys. It is much harder than it seems sometimes when you just read a newspaper article or you just hear some rumors and you don't have all of the facts. It is much, much harder than it sounds. And recognizing that the world has changed, recognizing that our key rules, we have those keystone rules of, parent residency and changing schools for athletic reasons that are absolutely critical, right, to making sure, and a prohibition on recruiting, by the way. Those are critical to making sure that we have fair and balanced competition. Enforcing those can be very, very problematic. And so instead of continuing to beat our head against that same wall, we're looking at some new ways to do that. Same kind of processes, same sort of philosophies underneath it, still having local control, still having the people closest to the situation ruling on it, just trying to give them some different options for doing that, trying to give them some different ways of thinking about it, to go about it in a different way, and to trying to provide more transparency. I won't go through the rule changes we recently had, but changes in the PAPF process in particular that will shine some light in some corners that have previously been dark and been hard to get more information from. Now we're going to try to do all that much more in the light of day and give those local committees a better shot at enforcing those rules. I just want to be very honest with everybody. Man, it's harder than you think. That is a very complicated process.
It really is. And from THSCA, we applaud the effort, and we have worked a lot together with our board and the UIL staff and Dr. Harrison and Dr. Broddup, and really applaud your effort in this area and moving forward with some new ideas and new thoughts and being able to manage that. So thank you very much. So my last question to you, just as we close out today, and this has been really good, and I appreciate you taking time to share this insight with us. But what is the one thing you wish that more people understood about the UIL and its work as we close out today?
I think what I would want them to know is the UIL is not one person. The UIL is not a group of people that work in a building in Austin. We are UIL employees, and we are a part of UIL. But UIL is all of us. UIL is coaches. UIL is the schools. UIL is school superintendents. It is band directors. And quite frankly, to a large degree, it is parents. They have the opportunity to give feedback. They have the opportunity to be heard in how our rules are working and how they're not working and how they can change. The UIL is much, much bigger than the people who actually come to work here every day. The UIL is its member schools, period. It is all of us. And that gets lost a lot of times. In some of the media reports, it gets lost a lot of the times when people are upset about a particular issue. But man, it's all of us, and we appreciate all of you for being a part of it.
Absolutely. And we appreciate what you guys do. And like I said earlier in this podcast, we feel like this is the greatest activity association in the country. And you guys continue to evolve and make life better for coaches and kids and families and communities and athletics in this state. So thank you very much. On a personal note, I really appreciate our relationship with UIL and working with you and y'all's efforts to work with our board of directors and keeping things fluid and healthy and moving forward. So great job today. Thank you very much, Dr. Harrison.
Appreciate you guys spending some time with me. Look forward to talking to you soon.
You bet. Chris?
Cool. Thank you, Joe, so much for some great questions. And I tell you, this episode is one I think people should keep with them, because when somebody complains about the UIL, say, just listen to this, because this answers so many questions. I have one quick selfish question, Jamey. How can I be a judge in the barbecue competition?
We don't have that yet, but that's one we certainly need to give further thought to.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. And thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
Hey, of course, I want to thank our guest, but I also want to thank you. I want to thank you for giving me what I consider the most valuable thing you can give, your time and your attention. And I know you don't do it to hear me. You do it for the great messages provided by the THSCA. And hey, if you'd like to associate your company with the THSCA and the Coach's Call podcast, limited sponsorship opportunities are available. You can reach out to me, Chris Doelle, 713-269-4620, or head over to my website, freshmediaworks.com. Once again, thank you so much for supporting Texas high school coaches. Please share this show out to everybody you can so that we can help share these important messages. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time on The Coach's Call. The interviews in this show are brought to you by the Texas High School Coaches Association. THSCA provides to its more than 26,000 members access to the people, events, tools, and resources to help them thrive in the profession, become trusted leaders in their communities, and live balanced and successful lives. The work and sacrifice coaches do every day is vital to the development and success of student athletes. The THSCA supports these efforts. We fight for every coach, provide them with the connections and resources to improve their lives, and help all student athletes throughout the state enjoy lasting success. The mission statement is simply this: to help and serve Texas high school coaches as they work to help and serve student athletes. Helping coaches help kids. For more information on the THSCA, visit www.thsca.com.